Yeah. I'll react if I had to. Put some things in the past too, and don't let them distract you, but react if you have to. Yeah. I'll react if I had to. Put some things in the past too, and don't let them distract you, but react if you have to. Yeah. React if you have to. Yeah.
Don't know the time, yeah. Just know that I'm, one of a kind, What's on your mind, We're hard to find, Beautiful mind, Still in my prime, Just know that I'm here.
What's up, guys? Pondoff's Anonymous, episode 21. Here we are. This is this episode could go really well, or it could go up shit creek without a paddle, like most of my childhood and young adulthood.
I'm excited for this one. This is going to be great.
Yeah, I bet you are. You've so wanted to. We have by far, and I may be biased, but the most beautiful guest we've ever had on. My mother, and she has. I said I would never do this. I said I would never do it, and I've been getting people saying you should have your mother on, and for those of you that have listened to this podcast, it's not something that you really want your mother hearing. Some of the stories she doesn't. I'll start off with saying she doesn't condone the language I use. Go figure. I think I got my mouth from her husband, my late father. He taught me at a young age, probably younger than Charlie, so about 4 or 5, that what you hear in the locker room. We played hockey. What you hear in the locker room stays in the locker room, and don't tell your mother the things you hear. So, Mom, welcome.
Well, I'm glad to be here, finally.
Yeah. I'm really nervous about this, Jeff. This could, like I said, this could go one or two ways. It's special. This week was, I guess, I don't really get wrapped up in all the Hallmark holidays, but when you're quarantined out, right? There's, when you see that it's a National Nurses Day, and my mother's an RN and has been a nurse for as long as I can remember. What a special week, considering all the times for nurses, and seeing that this is going to drop the Monday following Mother's Day. There was no better time to have on my mother, who has walked a long journey alongside me, and through it all, through it all, and we'll get there. We got quite a story that we can share. But she's been. I get called a mama's boy. We have our tiffs. I take responsibility for most of all of them. But
thank you.
I have a younger sister and an older sister who are quite often in the wrong, but rarely held accountable by my mother. And
well, Chris has always said he's the rose between two thorns.
Amen to that.
That's how I describe Chris. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, I believe. There's Lila. There's Lila, her little wiener dog next door. So the first person that, son of a bitch, she is such a pain in the ass, guys. I love her, but she's a pain in the ass.
She is barking at Charlie and Bristol, who are outdoors.
Are they really?
I think so.
I
don't know. I don't know that for
okay.
sure. But.
Anyway, sorry, everyone, but we're my cousin Mark, who we've talked about on this podcast before, who owns the restaurants up the street and has been through quite a journey himself in life, was the first one that said I should have my mother on. And his mother and my mother are sisters, and he did tell me that my mother would probably be the easier guest out of between her and my aunt, because my aunt's she's a little maybe stricter with some things, but we did get a laugh out of that. And at first, the idea to have her on was absolutely a non-starter. There's no way. I told people I didn't even want to fucking listen to this thing. Pardon my language, Mom. You don't condone the language, right?
I do not, and will you please not use the language while I'm here for my Mother's Day present, okay?
Oh man, big guns there.
I mean, that's ridiculous. That's asking a lot. Well, I mean, I got you so many presents, I'll have to send those back then. So, I've described Mom on this podcast, and you know my journey more than anyone, right? That there's probably two lives of Chris, of the pre-Tom dying and then the post-Tom dying, my father. It'll be 8 years next week. And sometimes, often to my mom's dismay, Tom and I were is it abnormally close? Or we just, I mean, we were, how would you describe our relationship? And
Well, you two were extremely close. When you were obviously, a baby, Dad would say to me, "You don't like him too much, do you?" Because I just couldn't seem to put you down ever. But I'll tell you, once your
cute
feet,
kid.
once your feet hit the ground running, Dad just sort of snatched you up from there. And I always said he's kind of stole you from me. And you two just formed a bond that still exists. And yes, in many ways it was good, and there were some ways it was not so good in my eyes.
And that's okay. You can, that's what we want to talk about, because when I was young, I idolized him, and growing up in ice rinks my whole life, and as you were speaking of the cursing and the way I guess I played hockey, my mom found it harder and harder to come to ice hockey games of mine. And why is that, Mother?
Well, your temper was out of control, and Dad didn't set any consequences for you. He, in fact, cheered you on for it. So you would use foul language on the ice. You had a temper. You spent most of your time in the penalty box. So I thought I couldn't stand the behavior, and why would I go when you were in the penalty box almost the entire game?
Kath, in my defense, I was on both sides of the score sheet. Okay, I had, I'd put the puck in the net and I'd be in the box. But Jeff, this when this started about 10 when I became a fluent. I could cuss a kid out like nobody else, and I was super fluent. In fact, I would argue the consequence, Mom, was a 2-minute penalty. I got a 2-minute penalty, and then I got to come back out and play hockey. But
Well, and also, Dad, I would tell you, you had to wear the mouthpiece and the neck brace, and you'd get to the rink, and Dad would say, "No, you didn't." I would say you needed to wear the right size skates, and Dad said, "No, they had to be a size smaller." So that just started our parenting issues. Okay, that's
sure. And then they morphed on from there, to put it calmly. But when, in fact, there was some times that when, as I went to college, or even really before that, but when I went to college and then after college started working for him, our lifestyles were unhealthy. We drank a lot. We ate unhealthy, and that was always my I can hear my mother and my father's sister, my aunts in New York they would try to come at us different ways about our health and, alcoholism and just unhealthy habits ended up probably being a major contributor to my father's early tragic death, and on top of some other things. But the more I drank in my 20s and the more that I did other things in my 20s, I became, I think, highly volatile. Would you say that?
Yes, absolutely.
And oftentimes in addiction, and I see this now working with people that were where I was, you lash out at the person closest to you, the safest person. And I did that. I lashed out a lot at my mother, so much to that when Tom died, her and I hadn't spoken to her for about a month. We were in, and I don't want to go down a rabbit hole of, and this isn't trashing ex-relationship that I was in, but I, have shared the story. The relationship was a super toxic, unhealthy relationship I was in, and it wasn't you're like, that whole saying, someone you bring home to your mother, like maybe this relationship wasn't that. And I purposely, propose. I have a hard time even saying it on Easter Sunday to take a shot. Like that's how the redlining I was living my life in this anger, and drunken and drug, cocaine and fueled days. And when my father did die, that instantly, like, it called my bluff. I don't know if that makes sense, but it called, like, that day, it's hard to even talk about it, but that day we all rushed over to the home where it happened, and all that was done and over with from my standpoint. And I think like when I say it called my bluff, it was because I could lash out at my mom and be so, volatile with her, but I knew she would never leave me. So it was safe. And I know it's brutal to talk about and it sucks. And the reason I want to share it is because I want to talk about some funny things on this episode, but the main thing I wanted to have you on, Mom, when I finally agreed to this fucking crazy idea, sorry for swearing, I'll work on it, to have you on this R-rated podcast about some real life ugliness out there that's happening. It's a disease, is because I want to talk about enabling with you and what that looks like from your perspective. Because since I've gotten sober and clean and lived the life of recovery, it's some of the hardest conversations I have to have with mothers on enabling their child. Because enabling, it's much more difficult, and it's so much more ingrained in the dynamic of the mother-child relationship. Then it comes so natural to mothers that it's hard. It's not, enabling is more than just saying, "Oh, I'll buy you a bottle of alcohol." There's so many more layers to it that you don't naturally know until you are in it and start, exhausting support groups and talking about it. So I bring that up, the hard shit that we went through and the way that I may have treated you in my 20s and up until Tom dying, because I was really, you lash out at the person closest to you that won't leave you. And I can say that my mom would never ever leave leave me through it all. And she's proven that. And then what it turned into after Tom died for, I always say, for 22 months until I checked into rehab, I was able to work the enabling system with her and tug on her heartstrings as a mother, as almost all addicts and at least attempt, and until they exhaust the resources enough to where it's time to shape up or ship out. And that's the main reason I wanted to have you on. And I really think
mothers can relate to that, because as a mom, well, I know I love Chris. My love for Chris is everlasting. It's unconditional, and I nurtured him all his life. So it was love and nurturing. And then I realized he was manipulating me, and I was not nurturing him. I was enabling him. So.
Yep. And after he died, I mean, it was all I had left was my mother. I had a relationship, and I often think God puts people in our lives for a reason, right? So, and it's not all bad, and it's not that it's all the other person's fault. Anytime I talk about that past relationship I was in, but there was it was just toxic. It was, a very unhealthy in terms of drugs and alcohol. And there was something, though, not being completely alone going through that. And I say, I was probably, I don't know if I was clinically fucking suicidal. Sorry. But I had given up on everything. And to have a body with me for 24 hours a day, and from your standpoint, Mom, the reason I'm bringing it up is because you knew in your heart that it wasn't probably wasn't the right relationship that would lead me to a life of health. What are your 3 H's?
Oh, my 3 H's has always been my prayer for my children to be holy, healthy, and happy, in that order.
This particular relationship I was in, because of 2 parties, not just one, I'm taking responsibility for it, were 0 of those H's. And she knew that, but she saw me literally dying, have given up on life, on everything after he died, that she was able to push that aside and include and and try to support again, and that talk about against your entire fabric and your being to do that's above that's where we were at during that time. That, and because we had been fighting, or because I had done the things I did leading up, the months prior to Tom's death, that you were afraid, and these are your words, and I'm paraphrasing, but you're afraid to kind of rock that boat in case I'd go fucking off the handle again. And
Right.
because when I was so drunk, I was like it's a powder keg, a ticking time bomb, and I would, me and you saw eye to eye about everything. I mean, when it came to, we weren't fighting. You didn't agree with any of my lifestyle decisions, but I would, call you all the time on the phone in a drunken stupor, threatening to kill somebody, or
Yes.
Sarah
Yes,
pissed me off.
through the night. Yes, this would go on all night, and my phone would be right next to my bed, which was a practice anyway as a mother. When you have 3 children, your phone's always right there. But with Chris, I was on high alert all the time, waiting for a call, either from him to scream at me, rage at me, or rage about someone to me, or tell me that he had harmed someone. That was a fear of mine, or that he harmed himself. So I was in a state of high alert for a
From
very long time.
and in between Tom's death and my going to rehab, there were plenty of those incidents. Before Tom died, there was the funny incident that Jeff and I talked about once at Mojack's Tavern when you came up to a bunch of fucking Hell's Angels bikers and told them that and yelled at them because you thought they were influencing me to smoke a cigarette. And I mean, I was 27 years old.
Well, I think I told them, I said, he is not to be smoking.
That's exactly what you said. These guys in their vests and their grenades hanging off their belts and their knives and pistols in their boots, and she's telling them though he is not to be smoking.
That's amazing.
Yeah, she almost got me killed. Those were those were the funny incidents, but and there was a couple of those. But after Tom died, in those 2 years until I got sober, I didn't really realize what. It's one of the things you do in rehab, and one of the things you do when you work a program. You wake up a little bit and realize, maybe not ever to the fullest extent of the shit that I put you through. But you get a little taste of it, and it's a hard pill to swallow, but the only way that you can say sorry till you're blue in the face, but the only way you can live remorsefully is by living this life that I'm living now. It's just onward and upward and healthy. I still have my moments. I get a little fucking moody because I am a recovering alcoholic. My mom's calling me Captain Quarantine because I'm barely protective over her. We're sheltered. So for those of you that don't know, my mother and I are next door neighbors. When I got out of rehab, I stayed on her couch for a couple weeks. And Jeff, she was like folding my laundry, making these home-cooked meals. She did not want me to go back to Belleville, where I had a roommate at a house we were living in that the house was on.
Smelled like a stale bar in there. Ugh, nasty.
So we're going to talk about this.
And I knew I wasn't letting Bristol go back there.
Bristol's my puppy, the spoiled granddaughter. Jeff, my mom, it was on East Bell Avenue. My mom calls it Hell Avenue, and some of my, not romantic girlfriends, but girlfriends that I grew up with, in particular, I'm thinking of two of them. They would report back to my mom how nasty it was because it was just cigs and ashtrays and booze and
they didn't even want to use the restroom there.
Come on.
One night, Sarah had to go spend the night there because she stayed out too late with
my
Andrea
older sister
and Stacy, I think.
Mom, it's easy on the names.
Jeff
easy.
Didn't want to pick her up, so she went to stay at Hell Avenue. Chris picked her up, and she called me the next morning. She's like, "You've got to come get me right now. This bed has no sheets on it. It's nasty, gross."
It was a fucking frat house, man. It was bad. Kath, you can't be dropping names. We got to be careful, but we're okay. The names you mentioned, I don't care about, but just just easy. Don't be. One night, there was one time, and I will not give. I have to skip over some of the details, but my father actually got in trouble, and I got a call on the highway, and my roommate. Tom and I were riding home from work. We carpooled, and I got a call from my roommate, and he said, "We got a little bit of a problem." I said, "What's that?" He goes, the guy that says it, when he's drinking, he kind of stutters and repeats himself, and he's like, fucking, your mom just threw all his fucking shit in the carport and fucking told me that I got myself a new roommate. And sure as shit, she took a bunch of his shit, threw it in the carport, told this guy before Tom and I got home, he had to stay there for 2 nights, and he called her and was begging her to come back. So needless to say, when I got out of rehab, she was making sure she did not want me to go back to Belleville, and she was cradling this like an egg, my new sobriety. She was worried, so she was making it hard for me to rush back over there. And I don't know, I'm pretty sure I've told this story, but the townhouse next door to my mom's house, it's adjacent, became available for lease, and the fucking address is Tom's birthday. So, talk about a sign hitting you right in the face. And I really had liked it over here, and it was quieter, and believe it or not, than Belleville, somewhere in St. Louis. It's just the way it is. And yes, I took it, and I've been living next door to my mother ever since. And before I met my now wife, it was always in the back of my mind if I was trying to pick up some gal, like, well, I don't live with my mom, but I live next door. So, my cousin had his restaurant, and I was real hot on the bartender there for a while. Great girl, and because my mom was a regular there too, she kind of was like, wait, do you live together? You want to talk about a fucking showstopper, man. God. But and then if I brought a girl home, then that you can hear my mom's dog barking in the background, and they'd be checking on. It's just it was but it was worth it, and I wouldn't have it any other way, because believe it or not, my wife now and is probably the first girl that I've dated, and during the my mom loves not some of my exes from high school and college, not necessarily the one that I proposed to just to piss her off. I didn't mean to give Tom a heart attack, but she likes him now. But when we were dating, there was my mom was a little, she was kind of, I always make fun of her, call her that. Have you seen that movie Monster-in-Law with the hard on my...
No, it's just I would say no girls are allowed overnight in our family home, and I'd be up, and there they'd come up in boxer shorts and T-shirts, and you just didn't do that.
Oh, well.
One came to my work.
Mom, all right, yep.
Oh,
okay, yeah,
okay.
It just maybe I was a little young, anyway. But now she I think you guys are all friends on social media. You guys all are sweet, and
we're good.
The point is, the girl I'm married to is my mom, and if something happens to this relationship, I'm fucked. My mom's already said that, see you later. I get Ashley in the custody bed.
Ashley's the favorite now.
No shit. It's really a pain in the ass. It's like I have now 3 sisters, and it's just me dealing with 3 of them now instead of just 2. So
can we talk a little bit for other mothers that?
Yeah, sure, Mom. It's your show.
That went through what I went through and are still going through it.
Yes.
I feel their pain, and can we talk a little bit about how that disease affects not only the moms, but the dads and the siblings and the friends and your circle, your tribe. So
yeah, you beat me to the punch. We were that's the meat and potatoes of this episode. I really want you to speak to them. I want to hand it over to you a little bit and talk about what it looked like watching me self-destruct, for a lack of better terms, and probably an understatement. I know you have some dear friends that have been in the same shoes that you're in. I mean, it's everywhere out there.
Yes, it is.
And talk about even checking when we checked into rehab together, how you drove me, and in that.
Well,
So
I think, first of all, your drinking started at an early age, against anything I believed in. But one of my first, I guess, recollections of when I really saw this going on, we were at a hockey tournament, and I think you were early teens, and Dad started filling up the bathtub in our hotel room with ice and beers and some soft drinks. And next thing I know, he's letting you kids come in and drink the beer. And
well, we
so I
just won a
think,
big game.
well, I mean, you were
Just
probably
kidding.
13, well,
We,
not that young, but still. And I
no,
think
we were.
that your drinking started at an early age, too early. Like when in the basement, you would have friends over, and I think you would be drinking.
Yeah, Tom would always come down and say hand check to make sure that
Well,
some of
first
my.
of all, Chris, we built this house with a walkout basement, and Chris, when he was maybe 15, decided he wanted his room down there, and I said, absolutely not. You do not put a teenage boy in a basement with the door. And I was working at Barnes at the time, the evening shift, and I came home, and Tom and Chris had moved his bedroom down to the basement. And I think that's when the drinking and I think that's when it started, probably, on a frequent basis. So I'm just saying that, Chris, I not that you were an alcoholic then, but your drinking started at a young age. And of course it escalated through the years.
Yeah, I mean, there's no
So
point.
that's hard for a mom to see that.
Sure, and there's no point to lie about it. I mean, I think you're that's what happened. I would sit downstairs. Well, even my senior year in high school, I somehow worked the fucking system over. Like I was going to school from 8:30 to like 11:45 because it was the marketing program where you just had to work 15 hours a week, and I had already I had refereed hockey games and drove the Zamboni at the ice rink since I was 16, and so I would go. I mean, I was going to school senior year 3 or 4 days of the week, brutally hungover. I used to have people taking me, remember shenanigans. We were going to these bars in Belleville when we were in high school, and on nights I wasn't going out, where I was downstairs in this walkout apartment. Pretty much, I was drinking whiskey and on the rocks, sipping on it.
Where were you getting the whiskey and the beer? Where were you getting your alcohol, because you were too young to buy it at the time?
Well, first off, I had IDs, but we also had connections at the liquor stores, which is, I don't know why we used to call the one liquor store. Well, it's 2020. I don't want to ruffle any woke feathers, but there's a liquor store, the one out by Wade Square. We'd buy an alcohol from that guy since we were 14. We used to drive to East St. Louis. Washington Park, they used to have a drive-through deli called Riverside Deli, where you would drive through it and they would just sell you liquor. Oh wow! It was, yeah. I mean, so, and then
did any parents that
and I'm getting
alcohol for you?
I'm getting there. Then if he knew I was being safe, Tom would give me a bottle I just drink his VO, and he'd replenish it, and we'd sit downstairs and bond over a couple whiskeys. And I became known as a guy that could handle his alcohol, and if anybody needed to have a drink, they were calling Chris Pondoff. So that's how it really took off. And because of the parenting shit that your guys' marriage was ruffled because of that stuff quite a bit. Never got divorced, but had some, like all marriages, some issues, and which I wouldn't trade it for the world now, looking back. But it was there was times where Tom and I would live together because of all this, because you were undermined and all that. I get it. I've heard the stories from your perspective, and I don't want to just, my old man, this is just, as much as I idolize him, there were some things that like I don't want to do for my kiddo, my 6-year-old, and I don't not, you know, the last thing I would ever do is dog on my old man, right? I'm insanely loyal to a fault, but I get it now that I'm a father, that I probably, and we've talked about that quite often, you and I have. But I did love that house, man. We had some fun, and I remember my high school. Now that you see in all these graduations and stuff, I feel so bad for these kids. But man, that would suck to be that age going through this quarantine stuff. I had a baller graduation party at the house, and I thought you were there, but you probably would have never been there for this because it was. I mean, I had a keg in the basement. We had people.
Well, I was there. I didn't know that the keg was in the basement, but your teacher came by. I was there. Yeah.
No, that was so no. So,
yeah.
So that was the graduation day part, not the graduation day. That was like when you have a graduation party and send out the cards. The party I'm talking about was after the night that we graduated. Like we came back. Your oldest daughter got me that keg, by the way, and So you can have a talk with her after this show. Her
but you're not saying any names, right?
Yeah. Her and Stacy, yeah. So, but there were kids fighting in my backyard till at 6 a.m. when the sun was coming up. It was nuts. I had
a buddy call the cops on you.
No, I had them all in the bag. I had a buddy in his minivan we lived on this dead end, and he was drilling some gal that he met that night. I don't know, but
your mom's on this, Chris.
Oh yeah, sorry. Shit.
Yeah. So anyway, the point is that your drinking started very young.
Mom, I've had you and our pastor on this, and God hasn't struck us down yet. So I'm rolling with the punches, rough around the edges, but we're giving back here. We're helping people, and you. It's funny about our pastor. My mother's the one who often says, "Well, do you think Matt would talk like that? Do you think Matt would say those things about his sister or something?" So I get that all the time, right? It's kind of a pain in my ass, but I'm not afraid to have
one call away. He's told me that.
Yeah, right. Well, and it's I have to talk to him about that because. So he can't be. This. What if I have pastor-client confidentiality? He can't be saying shit to my mom, right? I mean, isn't that a court order or something?
I don't know about that.
Mom, do you remember my 30th birthday party?
Yeah,
it was right at the worst.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't say. I forget. I can't say names.
I mean, my best man at my wedding, him and his wife, who's like a sister too. They threw a party for me. I think it was out of probably pity because Tom died when I was 28, so I was 30 and turning 30, and they wanted to have a 30th birthday party for me, and they knew how just a wreck of a life I was living. And this time it was it wasn't like glorious, like where I was out, king shit at the bars and work in the room and having not that I ever had the pick of the litter with the girls, but was I successful like with picking up girls? Like this was when I was at rock bottom wearing sweatpants and Crocs and t-shirts to the tavern and passing out on the floor every night. So I was a wreck. There's pictures out there to prove it. Screech often says that he has some of them, and if I ever piss him off, I would be in trouble. He's gonna send some of them out. But I was a mess, man. And that day, my mom was coming over. My sisters, they were living in St. Louis, and I was still in Belleville, and the house we were having was in Belleville. When they showed up, I was laying it was like 4:00 in the afternoon. I was laying in the back of their bathroom. And we're convinced I was having alcohol withdrawal because I got up that morning and didn't start drinking like I normally would on a Saturday. And I was so sick by 4 o'clock because I had taken it easy and not drank, because I didn't want to be, I would start on Saturday morning about, whether it was a screwdriver with breakfast or just finish the whiskey that I left on the table from the night before, which I would do every morning. By 5 o'clock, I was done. And, I wasn't done, but I was done. So I paced. I didn't do that. I wanted to had the sense. I was like, I want to make it through this party, and I'll start drinking about 3 or 4. Well, something happened, man. I got sicker than a dog, and I was laying on this bathroom floor for the first hour and a half of that party. And I heard my mom in the kitchen really worried about me, and she asked, this is how bad I was, Jeff. She asked one of my roommate at the time, who also he drinks quite a bit, and my mom cares for him deeply as well, but she asked him, she said, hey, can you make him a drink? I'm afraid he's getting really sick because he hasn't drank. And she even told him to make it strong. Like, she hated that I drank whiskey the way I did. But that's what's to get. And as soon as he brought it back to me, I started drinking it, and I rose from the fucking dead like the Undertaker in WWF.
No, I mean, just my nursing background told me he was very ill, and I really felt it was some kind of alcohol withdrawal. So anyway.
Needless to say, I was up till 4 a.m. Cleaning up somebody's puke that night, not my own, because I was ready to roll. I was off and at it, and then eventually went to sleep. Woke up at about 8:30 the next morning, and then was back at it. But it was shortly after that we went. And if you remember, Mom, tell our listeners what. That was, my birthday's around Thanksgiving, so that a month later at Christmas, which is my last Christmas drinking, do you remember what I had done on Christmas as far as gift giving?
Oh, yes. You gave me and your sisters some of your prized possessions.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And so his oldest sister really caught it and was very, very worried about him. And I don't know if you want to say what they were, but they were just some of Chris's really prized possessions. One being the picture of you and Dad, correct? Where, it's hard to talk about, but yeah, I think you were just really at your lowest of lows at that point.
Yeah, it's hard.
It's hard for me with these podcasts because I've lived it once, and so I can't always listen to everyone because then I relive the pain you went through, and a mom is only as happy as her saddest kid, and no matter how old they get. And so I lived through the pain with Chris. And so it's hard when I revisit it, in other words, which I'll do, but it's hard to talk about sometimes.
Yeah, it is. I've been prepping, just playing this interview or this episode out in my head since Jeff and I kind of came up with it, and he was like, yeah, you should do that. And then now talking about it, going back to that is pretty brutal. And I didn't have a plan or anything, but I just knew that I was coming to an end, that it was happening. My mom had got me set up with who was still my primary care physician. I've talked about her because I'm madly in love with her. Sorry, Ash, but she saved my life. She was my mother's doctor. She extended my mom's life by 5+ years, and my mom.
Your sister's doctor.
Yeah, so this is another thing. It's like fucking Pastor Matt. I go to the doctor and she's already heard. Like they've all emailed her lists of things that she's got to check off. He's eating too much pizza. He's a little moody. You should see these things. It's like a grocery list. It's ridiculous. They all contact my pastor and my physician for to try to tune me to I'm a work in progress. But
It's a blessing and a curse right there.
Jeff and I have talked often on this show about just starting at your primary care physician, your PCP, with talking about like mental health stuff. And I had been, since you talked me into going to see her, which was before Tom died, and I was honest with her, and she knew how Tom and I were living, and she's for 100 pounds soaking wet, little Indian gal. She's a ball breaker, and she's been on me. She was on me, and towards the end there, she had done some labs on my liver, and it was bad news how high my liver was. My liver enzymes were through the roof and approaching liver disease, and
cirrhosis.
She said, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
It's amazing though when you do stop, and now I guess I'm stealing your thunder, but your liver enzymes are back in normal range, and
she called it a medical miracle. She called it a medical miracle. 6 months after. Well, and so when she had told me about that was probably months before my 30th birthday, and I wasn't going to stop. I wasn't. And I don't know if that led to giving away because I didn't think I was going to see another Christmas. I didn't know. It wasn't like I had a plan or a letter written out, but it was suicide by bottle, no question about it. And there was an event. I finally checked into rehab then on March 25th of 2014, and there was a I did something stupid on it was right around St. Patrick's Day, right, like the party of St. Patrick's Day was maybe the Saturday after St. Pat's or whatever, and I went fucking psycho on Kevin, and God bless him. It was a safe person probably, and he was one of my best friend's fathers. I attacked at a bar in Belleville because my best friend had started blocking my calls, and I stormed this tavern and went looking for him in the kitchen and the women's bathroom. Thought he was hiding from me, and he wasn't there. But anyway, I made a big scene. It wasn't like, oh, I can't believe I did that, I'm going to rehab. But I woke up the next morning, and it was the final straw. I was like, either I'm going to die or so I called my mom that weekend, and I said, I guess I'll, because her and Dr. Naidu had been working. Oh, excuse me, I said her name, but her and my doctor had been working and found they always, you're finding a place, and they talk about it probably as more than I even know, as much it was doing to my mom's mental health, my lifestyle, and she had already lost Tom, and now she was losing me, and so I called her and I said, I'm going to call Dr. Naidu on Monday, and I don't know if you remember the exact call, but I know you weren't getting your hopes up, right? When I called you.
I guess I was always hopeful, but.
So that Monday I went and saw Dr. Naidu, and she said, you need to go right now. And this is the same thing I would tell people that I'm talking to now. And I kept saying, I got to get my affairs in order. And I hear that a lot now on my end. I needed to go home, and I needed to have a night, I guess, with a bottle and just sit and think about it, and and nurse. I don't know, but I went home, and I don't think you or Dr. Naidu thought I was going to show back up. I was going to follow through with it, but it was a Tuesday, and I woke up that morning and I drove over to Webster where you were living, and I remember you took me to Straub's and got me some snacks, and then we showed up at that place in New City, and that I know that was hard on you, but you were brave. That's an understatement how brave you were for me, and because it was the scariest day of my life. I often look back at a Facebook memory on that day, checking in. I put on my status, scariest day of my fucking life, and it was. And I remember going in and talking with the intake team, and you remember what I kept telling them, Mom?
Yeah, you were going to be a casual drinker.
Right.
You were still going to drink at your buddies' barbecues. You'd have some beers.
Some Coronas.
Yeah.
around the pool. They all kind of looked at me and like, all right, fucking know it all. We'll just wait.
They like shooed me out the door. It's like, okay, Mom, bye-bye.
Mm-hmm. Well,
But I'll tell you what, that night was the first night that I slept sound in a very long time, knowing he was safe, he wasn't going to harm himself or anyone else.
Yeah, and just going back to that, man, it was checking into that place. They strip search you, right? And they put these scrubs on you. They take all, like, you could bring it overnight. You bring a bag of clothes and they wash it all. And I got my bag back, and I had taken my Jesus Calling devotional. Actually, my mom packed it for me, and inside of it was a bunch of prayer cards that she had handwritten scriptures on. And I had my Ollie button for strength, and you included pictures of me and Tom, and it all was the foundation of my new life. And I've told the story 100 times, 1,000 times about how I had a screaming match with Jesus that night, and just like was the ultimate humbling. And I saw what grace, felt what grace was, and started becoming grateful for my mom. I had friends calling me in rehab, leaving me messages that I still have. It was incredible. And I kind of took off in there with the group therapy stuff, and there I saw myself already helping people that were worse off than I was. And I couldn't wait to get out. I think that goes for about everybody, but I started to get my sense of humor back even in rehab, because on April Fool's I called my mom and told her I had relapsed on heroin from their. It's an April Fool's joke, Jeff.
Yeah, that was so mean.
You're sick, Chris.
I got her.
Yeah, thank you. Mm-hmm.
I got her, but when I got out, I had a place. She took care of me like she always has, and then it was what I've always said: you receive grace from God, and this love from this unconditional, everlasting, like you said, Mom, love from a mother that will care, that has cared and done everything for you. And you, as many times as I've taken for granted, I've thrown in her face, I've done all the shit a faulted, shitty son can do. She's never left my side, and not everybody has that, and I understand that, and I do, and I'm grateful beyond words for you, and the tragic shit that we went through with Tom, and the details that will be left unsaid for now, but we went through some real rough shit, and I heard it in Matt's sermon on Sunday, talking about perspective, with how he talked to a 92-year-old that goes to our church, who's been through the Depression, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, all that shit, right? The missile crisis. For you liberals, Trump. But and you relate to your own personal story, and from the go-kart accident since I was little that our family went through with Johnny, to all the lawsuits and shit with that for 10 years, through Tom, through our family losing Oliver, to it is now because of your staying with me and walking with me through all the pits. It is well with my soul. I know that, and I'm so grateful for it. And I just I owe it to you to do what we're doing now. And the podcast can be funny at times. It could be vile, if they want to call it that, or vulgar. Not ever expecting you to approve of the language, but Jeff and I are getting calls a lot, and we're able to relate with people and have helped some people, some real life people, as recently as this week, get to rehab, and hope to give a mother, a son, loved one, their addict back, their alcoholic back, and a road to recovery. Because, like you said earlier, who it affects around you, the disease isn't just the disease of the addict, it's the disease of the entire family. And like you said, you're only as happy as your saddest child. One of your closest friends has gone through it, walked it, and you guys have talked often about it and how hard it is and what enabling looks like. There was times, Jeff, where towards the end, my mom realized that she would like give me groceries, or she would buy me pizzas. I'd use her card and order a bunch of pizza to the house, and she realized that's just freeing up money for alcohol. So, I mean, she started getting me all these gift cards that said no booze or cigs, and she didn't realize I could
no
sell
alcohol or cigarettes.
Yeah, right.
Yes, and then that didn't work because then he was still getting food and having money for alcohol. But one thing I do want to a point I want to make to leave with other mothers. The journey was really, really tough for me, seeing your child disintegrate, like his soul, his body. It was just heartbreaking. And I don't think I could have gotten through it without faith and without prayer and support. But one thing I found solace in was, I do have to say that I would go to the Poor Clares in Belleville, and they're a sequestered, cloistered group of nuns. You don't see them. You just can hear them singing a cappella behind a beautiful screen, and you can go into this little chapel that's so serene and pray, and you can go to the window and write your prayer request on a small piece of paper and give it to them. You put it through a window. And I did that often. And even before Tom died, he would, even if we'd be out, I'd say, "Oh, please let me run into the Poor Clares." So he knew what I was doing. He didn't object. He'd pull up and let me go in and pray for Chris and give them my prayer requests. So I just knew that God had his back, and that God had the power to change Chris and make him a new creature. But it was through faith and prayer. And I have to say, I have gone back on a couple of occasions to thank them and let them know. Like the first anniversary, I went back around that time and let them know I wanted to thank them for their prayers, and told them, "My son Chris that you've prayed for is now sober a year." And I went back another year, and then I went back and put the note through that he's found this perfect girl. He met her at church, and he's so faithful and loves God now. And I went back and told him about Charlie, But and they'd always send me a letter in the mail, typed on a typewriter, to thank me and let me know they were continuing to pray for my son, and they were so happy he found a wife. And but anyway, it was just through prayer and God walking with me through this journey that held me up, because when you're seeing your child stumble and crumble and disintegrate, it's hard. So anyway, that's where I got my backbone, was, I think, from God being with us, and seeing the miracle now. He did make Chris a new creature, and Chris is doing amazing, wonderful things, and his heart is so good, and he yearns to help anyone. So anyway, I'm just so proud, Chris, of you.
Well, I wouldn't be here without you. I guess, literally, but even throughout and wouldn't have made it to rehab. You were probably the last thing I had to live for. So, and my youngest sister did tell me at one point that without Dad, she would need me one day to walk her down the aisle, and I think that offer still might be on the table. But
I think so.
There was one time, Jeff, that we had kind of an issue with a neighbor in the neighborhood we lived at, and I kind of pulled this guy out of his house at like 11:30 at night on a Friday night. And I called my mom. I was like, I'm getting ready to... And she's like, he can be a pain in the ass, but don't hit him. Like, it was... I don't know. I gotta be careful with some of the storytelling, but...
Yeah, but all your niece or your cousins, I mean, everyone had their phones. They finally started turning their phone off at night so they could sleep. Chris would drunk dial everyone and tell them off or whatever.
I had a big chip on my shoulder. There's something about alcoholism. You got a big chip on your shoulder, and it's addiction. And it's amazing how things that get better when you face it and you go to treatment and live a life in recovery. Medically, my body it's amazing how resilient it was. It's gone back to about 80%. My hair hasn't quite grown back like it was, but my liver was a miracle. The anger starts dissipating. I was able to fucking grieve the right way, and I was able to walk with my grief, and now I can run with it at times. And you don't have a chip on your shoulder. Not everybody's out to piss you. You just all that starts subsiding, and you just life is so much more peaceful now. And I would never want it to go back to that utter chaos that I was living. That almost literally killed me. And it's just there were times that when I was using, or I was up in college on a real alcohol cocaine binge. Once all the doors were shut and all the girls were gone and it was just me alone, I would lay in bed and I'll be unable to go to sleep because I was so jacked up on speed that I would fear I was having a heart attack, and I would pray to God to not do that to my mom, and that I would yearn for her like a little fucking baby yearns for a mom. And I can count on both hands, both feet. I mean, probably 100 times that I would do that, even out of college, that I had done too much. I couldn't fall asleep. I'd start having a panic attack, and I would start crying like a baby for my mom. And there was times where I almost called her, but I would never ever want to admit to her that I was doing that, because I know how much it would crush her. And that shit goes through your head, and I don't know. It's just crazy, and it is hard. This is a little bit harder than I maybe had thought, but the good news is now I'm healthy. What are the H's again? Holy,
healthy, and happy.
And I went from 0 for 3 to 3 for 3 in a pretty quick turnaround. And I say that because I want also what my mother was saying about clinging on to hope and her faith, and there is hope to be had, and I don't want people to ever lose it. I've seen cases that are so much worse than me that have turned around, and now those kids are being celebrated. Those people are being celebrated as well because of it's just a miracle. It's the impossible becoming possible. So I think that's the message here. And if you ever have any questions about enabling, on what it looks like, I urge, Mom, you went to Al-Anon meetings, people to check out Al-Anon. They have Nar-Anon for families and friends of drug addicts.
Well, yeah, I was still going over to Hell Avenue and taking him shopping and trying to clean a little in that awful house and trying to like do all this for him and him and his drunk roommates. I thought, well, they've got to eat healthy, and I tried to go buy him healthy food or take food there, and
Friday's
they told
Pizza.
me, oh, no. And it was so bad over there. I was there on a Sunday afternoon, and some guy pulled up in his front yard and to use the restroom.
He started urinate. He started pissing in my front yard. Face. My mom dropped something. She goes, "Oh my God, there's some man peeing like facing the house, middle of the yard."
It was just, you can get a picture. It was bad over there, and so
I knocked that fucker out, by the way. But anyway, that's not Christian.
Yeah, someone was telling me.
Let us pray, amen.
Yeah, a friend of mine kept saying, "You've got to go to Al-Anon. You are just enabling him." And so you can do it online if you don't want to actually go. But it was a great support for me and telling me what not to do that I was doing. So, yeah, you can't be doing all that stuff. Because then they manipulate you, and then they make you feel guilty. Oh, you don't love them if you don't do this, and it's bad.
I would never say that.
Oh, you like my sisters more than me. And,
well, that's still an issue. Okay, we can address that a little later. That's still a big issue. But I remember when they. So I went to rehab, but you sent my youngest sister over to Hell Avenue to get my doggy.
Oh yes. Yeah.
You always say she jumped in your car and didn't look.
She did not look back. She went right from there to the groomer for a bath, and we had her nails painted hot pink, and she has been living her best life ever since.
Jeff, I have pictures of where I'm passed out on the floor. So for 2 years, I didn't go to sleep. I would just fall asleep either on my couch or on the floor. And there's pictures of her laying with her paws, overlooking like the edge of the couch, the edge of the bed at me. People would take pictures of this, just looking at my fucking drunk, passed out, fat, you know what, man. It was embarrassing. But so
it even affects the dog.
That's how bad.
Yeah, for real.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
yes. So what song are you guys going to play for this one?
I'm glad you asked. Dear Mama by Tupac.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Isn't that okay? Didn't you play that person at your wedding or something?
No, that was California Love, but because Ash is from California, but we played Dear Mama from Tupac. Tupac goes, Mama, you always was a crack fiend, but Mama, you always was my black queen, Mama.
Oh, you put that on a CD for me years ago. Yes,
I did.
Okay. I wondered what song was going to play.
And I gave you a shout out on social media for Nurses Day, and
thank you.
We were dancing to that to Simple Man, the song you always wanted to dance to with me to, and you gave a great speech, and here we are now sheltered in place together, and
oh my goodness. But I want to say God bless all the mothers out there that that are going through what I went through, and it's a hard journey, but God bless all of you mothers, seeing your child in pain right now, and don't give up on them. Don't ever give up.
That's a great message. Well, we covered a lot, and I could keep going, but I know you probably got a dateline or something you want to catch.
Get back to my book.
Thanks for doing this. Thanks for everything. Obviously, I don't know how to close this the right way, but is it? It's so heavy. Like you've done everything, and then some that you didn't need to, and we appreciate it. I appreciate it. I've been able to now give some life to to a traumatized little boy, and who is now my son, and I couldn't have done any of that had you not met me where I was and carried me and held my hand to treatment, and that's how life can really rebound for those of you that are listening that are maybe in the pit or at rock bottom. Mom, I love you, and I'm just so grateful for you, and I am still not perfect by any means, but I love you very much, and I wouldn't be alive. You gave me life twice.
Oh.
At least.
Well, oh, thank you so much, and I'm so proud of you.
And I know you always think that I, love Tom more differently. I loved him differently.
Yes, of course, I understand.
But I always am at heart a mama's boy, and our dear friend Martha calls that out often when I'm asking you to still pick me up some groceries.
At least I'm not boiling your eggs anymore. He has a wife now. Amen.
She don't do that shit either. Well,
Ashley tells him boil your own eggs.
And now I'm even with Charlie. I'm below Charlie, Bristol, Ashley, all my sisters. I'm the bottom on the totem pole, Jeff. It's not all as hunky dory as it sounds.
Yeah.
Well, I love you, Mom, and thanks for coming on. And I think your message is so hopeful for parents and mothers, especially that are feeling so helpless watching their child or their son or daughter self-destruct and implode, and it's a helpless feeling. I can imagine watching that, and we always will pray for the parents and the mothers whose kid didn't survive this disease. I saw something today that said, we will all have our last drink, but the lucky ones get to talk about it in meetings and in recovery, live to talk about it. So we are mindful that not everybody survives this, and for those mothers that on Mother's Day we're praying so hard for you, and for those mothers that are in the middle of this gigantic storm, don't, as my mother said, don't ever lose hope. And like my mother always did say, that God can change the heart of any man. So I think will be a good place to leave it. Jeff, thanks for hosting this and listening to this. I know it. We had happy Mother's Day to your mother too, brother. And
yeah, of course, yeah.
And thanks for being a part of the conversation as well, as we're on this mission to lend our hands out and help those that are where I was, and the folks that are battling the mental health demons that we all seem to struggle with a little more, some more than others. But we're gonna keep on keeping on, Mom. I'll work on the language, and
thank you.
And I'll work on the gambling. There's no sports to gamble on now, so I'm as square as they can be, and I'll try not to be so moody, especially with your Charlie.
Oh, good.
All right.
Yeah, perfect.
Well, I love you so much.
Love you too, honey.
Thanks for coming on, Jeff. Love you too, brother. And you guys
Love you too.
Have a good night, and happy Mother's Day, Mom.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Well, with that, we'll wrap it up, guys. Thanks for being here. Everybody, I hope you had a great Mother's Day. And with that, let us pray. Amen.
If you're struggling or know someone that is, please have them check out our podcast and reach out to Chris or me. We want to listen, and we're super eager to help.
Pondoff's Anonymous is Chris Pondoff and produced by me, Jeff Allen. Our music is Anti-Hero by McCall and Gentle Waters by Wild Wonder. For more information, visit pondoffsanonymous.com. Find us on Facebook and Instagram.